So, you're stuck trying to figure out your Enneagram type. I'd like to share something with you that I can't guarantee will fix your problem immediately, but I think it'll at least give you the next thing to think about if you are feeling like you've reached a dead end or like you've gotten stuck at an early fork in the road. I think it's important to take a step back and think about where these types come from and why are there 9 of them? Knowing this information can be a big step forward in knowing for sure what type you are. Because instead of being some vague and mystical thing like the horoscope, the Enneagram is actually based in pretty simple logic that we pretty much all agree on about reality. In order to have a personality system, any type of personality system, you really just need 2 things. A self and a world. A personality is who you are in reference to the world. If you take away the you, there goes your personality. And if you take away the world, take away everything that you have to interact with or think about, the idea of a personality just becomes meaningless. So the recipe for a personality has 2 ingredients, a self and the world. And by understanding what you believe deep down about these 2 things, you can pretty much find your Enneagram type. I believe in you. So can we both agree that both you and the world are horrifying places? Don't get me wrong, life is obviously full of beautiful things, but the concept that a you exists, horrifying. You are mortal. You're going to be forgotten about. You have this rich inner life that no one else will ever get to experience or appreciate. Basically, you're deeply and forever alone. You'll never even touch someone for real in your life. It's all an illusion. If you think that's bad, just wait till you hear about the world. It's a horrifying place. It's full of all of these dangers and uncertainty. It's not fair. There are microorganisms where the only thing that they eat are the decaying eyes of dead baby animals. Both you and the world are objectively dangerous. However, we as humans just can't live in abject terror of all of these things 24/7. We would just be in the psych ward in straitjackets yelling our head off. The Enneagram says that rather than doing that, screaming our heads off all day every day, most people will typically carve out a refuge for themselves by choosing a delusion about either the world or themselves. Given a scary world and a scary self, there's really only 3 possible types of delusion or coping mechanism that are possible. You can either believe the world's a better place than it is, the self's a better place than it is, or that there's essentially a balance between the 2. The difference between these are fear, shame, and anger, which are the 3 main triads of the Enneagram. So first off, let's say you accept the delusion that the world is a better place than it is. That's going to be really helpful to believe that the world is equitable, that the world is predictable, or that the good things in life balance out the bad and make them somehow okay. That's going to be a helpful delusion. That's going to help you get through life without losing your mind. But the problem with glorifying the world like this is that these types are going to feel like their selves are deficient. They realize that they can't live up to their own idealized conception of the world. So the types in the shame triad, 2, 3, and 4 represent, are going to spend most of their time trying to cover up for something, or compensating for something, or trying to fix what other people think about them. This is shame. And it's what types 2, 3, and 4 do. They believe the world is all right, but the self is scary. However, you're also free to pick the opposite delusion, which is that the self is great, but the world is scary. Little golden statue self. Scary world. Types 5, 6, and 7 in the fear triad are going to really be overconfident about their own resources as an individual. They're going to think that they are masterful or shrewd or just quick enough to escape the most painful things in life. So the types in this triad are going to spend most of their time using their perceived strengths to escape from consequences and torture. This is what fear is all about. The self is all right, but the world, scary. And lastly, there's a middle way between fear and shame, anger. That's to have some delusions about self and some delusions about the world. Hey, why not have a half delusion about each? That's what types 8, 9, and 1 prefer. Just to give you a little more detail, because I think this one's a little harder, at least for me to wrap my mind around. The type 1 finds this balance kind of in the way that the traditional Western religious types do, which is to say, yeah, the world is horribly broken, but through divine revelation, we can know exactly the right thing to do. So the bad things are manageable. The 9 is kind of the more traditional Eastern philosophy that says chaos and order are both two sides of the same coin, and it's important to maintain a balance and stillness between the two. And type 8, oh man, they know that the world's terrifyingly chaotic, so their way of dealing with it is saying, I can't control the whole world, and I can't control all of myself, but if I mark out my strict territory in the world, I can make sure that this is safe and that I'm safe in it, and that'll be okay. And what all three of these types have in common is a shared belief that the world and the individual are mostly balanced. Both are somewhat scary and somewhat good. This means the type is going to be obsessed with their responsibility and their actions because they're naive enough to believe that the problems of the world are fixable and that the individual is competent enough to do something about them. This is anger. It's the aggressive urge to use one's power to change things. Logically speaking, really. These are the only three orientations that you can have to the world. I suppose, you could believe that the self and the world are full of sunshine and roses, but, that's not really realistic. Or you could just decide, I'm not going to live with any delusions. I'm going to face the horrors of the world and self head on. You can try doing that, but it's really uncomfortable, and you probably won't be able to do it for long. It's just too scary. So if you're stuck trying to figure out your type, I would encourage you to just pause for a minute on looking at all of the various contradictory details of your life and all of your fun quirks. Those can be really cool to dissect later on after you've got a good basic understanding of your type. For now, I would just take a step back and try asking, what is my deepest belief about myself? And what is my deepest belief about the world? Is my orientation to the world shame, fear, or anger? These are the questions that the Enneagram asks you to be brave enough to ask yourself, and then peel back and see what's underneath.